Very good morning, everyone. Today we are starting with the very first topic for post-graduation program in export and import management. So, firstly, we're starting with the very first topic that is all about the policy framework for India's foreign trade in a pre and post liberalization era. Firstly, we're starting with the introduction part. So, as we know what happened back in the 1991, India's economy were facing certain crises. During that time, India's required certain monetary organization, India's required certain monetary policies who could manage the entire world economy and who could manage the entire Indian economy. So, Indian economy and foreign trade are closely interlinked. The early policy initiatives aimed at the liberalization of India's foreign trade. The outward looking trade policies measured announced in the 1991 marks the initiative of new era in India's foreign trade. As we know what we have done during the 1991, we have done the economic reforms and in the economic reforms we have done the three things came into existence that is what LPG. L stand for the liberalization, P stand for the privatization, G stand for the globalization. During that time, inflation was quite high, recession was running the market. So we had required certain economic reform we could manage the entire Indian economy. During that time, Indian Prime Minister used to be the Narasimha Rao sir, and the Finance Minister used to be the Dr. Manmohan Singh. So under the guidance of the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, what we have done certain economic reforms, and what we have tools we have used in our economic reform, that was all about the LPG. And after the 1991, the new era in the Indian foreign trade has been started. As we know what happened, total value of Indian mercantile export increased from US $1.3 billion in a 1950-51 to it has been reached, it has been drastically increased in a 2021, it has been around 290.63 billion dollar. We have seen the a very great high in the last 70 years due to the policies which we have liberalized in the 1990s. The proportions of high values and differentiated product have increased our export basket. The composition of trade is now dominated by manufactured goods and services. While India's trade growth has a strong correlation with the world trade growth, particularly in two time period, first following the 1990s reform, what we have done, I've already told you, and second we have done slightly changes in the reform in the policies that was we have done in 2003. So this is all about the basic introduction, and there are still more. India adopted the import substitution strategy before the reform to protect its domestic industries by imposing high tariff and quantitative restrictions on import. As we know, India's domestic industry was suffering a lot. So protect the Indian domestic industry. What we have done, we have started one strategy. That strategy was import substitution strategy. What is this meaning? Suppose that whatever the product and services which we are importing from across the globe, if we have started certain local manufacturing of those products and services, so what can be beneficial for Indian economies means Indian domestic market will be upward. Indian domestic market will be uplift. What we have done, we have started imposing the high tariff and quantitative restrictions on the import. If suppose what are the tariff barriers? Whatever the taxes and duties which we are imposing while doing any international trade, that thing is called tariff barrier. Suppose that we have started imposing the high tariff barriers on the imported goods, automatically foreign goods will be the costlier, then automatically all those person who belongs to India, they will prefer the Indian domestic goods as compared to the imported goods. After the post liberalization, India adopted the export promotion strategy just to promote its export so as to increase the foreign exchange earning. As we know, during that the 1991 we had a foreign reserve of just 15 days. We were facing certain foreign reserve crisis. Just because of to increase the foreign exchange earning, what we have done before the liberalization, we have started the import substitution strategy. But after the liberalization, we have made the certain liberal policies. We just wanted to promote the export. What we have done, we have started numerous number of the export promotion strategies so we could manage the we could promote the Indian export. A mounting deficit coupled with the high inflation. I've already told you that India had a around more than double-digit inflation rate during the 1990s. The Gulf War led India to a balance of payment crisis in 1991. It was again one of the major problems we were facing. That was all about the balance of payment crisis in 1991. Now, what is all about the balance of payment? Balance of payment is an annual statement of all the financial record, all the financial transaction which we are doing from one country to the rest of the world within the certain period of time is called balance of payment. Following the crisis, the Indian economy was opened up to the foreign participation for the very first time in an attempt to improve the efficiency and competitiveness of Indian industry. What we have done in our liberalization, we have made certain liberal policies, we have removed the license raj, the privatization, what we have done to promotion of the private sectors, and all those public sector units were not running successfully in the market, which we have, and what we have done, just transformation of public sector to the private sectors. And in a globalization, what we have done, there is a globalization is all about the integration of the economy, means whole world will come under the single umbrella. So what actually we just wanted to be do during the 1981, we just wanted to be increase the efficiency and competitiveness of Indian industries. And the post 1991, the gradual liberalization of Indian economy characterized by such policy reform created a very conducive environment for India's export to flourish and evolve into an engine on of social and economic growth. And next, further moving in the post liberalization period, that is post 1991, India followed export promotion strategy which geared up export from 13,970 US dollar to in 1980-89 to 22,230 US dollar in 1993 and 1994. Means in a just 5 year of the tenure, it has been growth of 59.18% in the export, because whatever the export policies we have followed post liberalization, it has been given the tremendous benefit to the Indian export industry. The liberalization of the Indian economy following the balance of payment crisis resulted in a major policy in exchange rate changes, which had a favorable impact on India's trade. India's export performance since 1991 has been fluctuated. And the further we are moving towards, as we know what happened back in the 1997, East Asian crisis of 1997 had a serious impact on the India's export, which registered a negative growth of 2.33% in the same year. In the 1997, it was the very first time after the liberalization, India export registered a negative growth. Yeah, this is the point we should notice. After the 1991, after 6 years, it was the very first time India's export growth has been become the negative. The situation for India's worsen when its competitor countries just like ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations, devalued their currencies. The crisis, because of the crisis, which reduced the competitiveness of Indian industries in the market. And further, in 2001 and 2, during the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Sarkar, India faced another setback in export as large due to the semi-recession faced by the US. As we know, most just because of the interdependencies among all the nations, if suppose that one countries like a US or Europe or China or some other Asian countries, they are facing certain crises, they are facing certain recession situation in their economy. India has to be face those problems in their respective domestic economy. But during the 2001 and 2, India faced another setback in its export at large due to the same recession faced by the US, one of the India's biggest trading partners. US used to be the still India and US, they have very good trade relationship. The slowdown of the US economy permitted to other economies in the next major setback for India export was the global crisis of 2008. As we know what happened back in 2008 due to the certain banking crisis, India also faced certain export crisis. The collapse of large investment bank around the world coupled with the high oil prices, rising inflation lead to a global recession in the market. And the next major setback for India export was the global crisis of 2008. The collapse of large investment bank, as we have already told you. Even though the export sector plays a significant role in a domestic economy by contributing close to 25% to Indian GDP, this is a very important point you just need to notice. Its contribution to the world export continued to remain minimal at a merely around 1.5% of the world export in 2009. However, this year has improved since the economic reforms of 1991. Between the 1991 and 2019, India's share in a world export rose from 0.56%, not even the 1%, to 3.5%. But overall, the economic reforms implemented in India did not have a significant impact on India's position in the world export market, unlike the other reforms implemented in countries like China, South Korea, or Taiwan. Now, what is the role of the World Trade Organization in a trade liberalization? WTO, the World Trade Organization, is the only global international organization dealing with the rules of trade between nations. It was formed in 1995 with a general agreement on tariffs and trade. Okay, as we know ki after the Bretton Woods conference we have to be go back in 1930s. During the Great Depression in 1930, we have conducted one conference. That conference name was the Bretton Woods Conference. During that conference, we have founded three organizations: International Monetary Fund, World Bank, and ITO. ITO was failed due to certain organizational structure. Then what we have found? We have found one agreement, that is was General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. So GATT, IMF and World Bank, they are mainly for to provide certain loans to the member countries, but GATT was mainly for to regulate the entire world trade, whomsoever they are the member of GATT. GATT was established in 1947 with the participating country used to be the 23 country. In 1949, it used to be 13 countries. Then 1951. What actually year? This is the year place whenever any country used to face certain crisis. What they have done, they have used to meet it at one place on particular place name. They used to call it a round. So we have seen the numerous number of rounds in a WTO starting from 1947 to 1995. So first round was held in Geneva, then NC, Turkey, Geneva, Kennedy, Geneva, Tokyo, Uruguay round. So it used to be the 1951, it used to be the 38 country, then 26, then 62, 102, 123 country. We have seen from 1947 to 1994, it was around 47 year of the tenure. We have seen the numerous number of the updates, numerous number of the things has been come in a GATT. What are the World Trade Organization objective? WTO is basically working for WTO agreement facilitate the producers of goods and services, exporters and importers to conduct their business in the global market. WTO is basically providing the platform for the trade negotiations. Any country who, as of now, around 164 countries are the member of the GATT or WTO, because GATT has been transformed in a WTO in 1994 after the Uruguay round. And WTO also working for removing the non-tariff barriers in a short run and reducing the tariff barriers in long run. And WTO is the mainly, and WTO is the only body which is actually working for uniform policies for across the member country, and they are providing certain technical assistance to the member countries also. So WTO is just like they are just like playing the role of the watchkeeper in international trade. WTO is the one of the most important regulatory body which is responsible for every single transactions which is actually happening across the globe. Now, what are the highlights of foreign trade policy 2015-20? Export from India scheme. So merchandise export from India scheme, MEIS, which is commonly known for. Earlier, there were 5 different schemes: focus product scheme, market linked focus product scheme, focus market scheme, agri infra incentive scheme, UKGUY, for rewarding merchandise export with different kind of duty script with barring condition, sector specific or actual user speak, attached to their different uses. Now all these schemes have been merged into a single scheme, namely merchandise export from India scheme, and there would be no conditionally attached to the script issued under the scheme. So whatever the schemes used to be going on, used to be running, all those five schemes has been merged in a one single scheme that is all about MEIS. Reward, this scheme is basically working for reward for export of notified goods to notify market under the MEIS shall be payable at a percentage of reliable FOB values in free foreign exchange. The debit towards basic custom duties in transferable reward duty credits script would also be allowed adjustment as a duty drawback. At present, only the additional duty of customs tax is allowed to adjustment is a Senbert credit or drawback as per the Department of the Revenue rules. Other is a service export from India scheme SEIS. Served from India scheme SFIS has been replaced SEIS has been replaced with the service export from India scheme. SEIS shall apply to service providers located in India instead of Indian service provider. Thus, SEIS provide for reward to all type of service providers of notified services who are providing services from India regardless of the constitution or profile of the service provider. It doesn't matter actually. The rate of the reward under SEIS would be based on the net foreign exchange earned. The reward issues a duty credit script would no longer be with actual user condition and will no be longer be restricted to uses for specified types of good, but it will be very freely transferable and usable for all type of goods and services. Tax debit on procurement of services goods, and debit would be eligible for, please note down this point, debit would be eligible for Senbet credit or drawbacks. Chapter 3, incentive MEIS and SEIS to be available for SEZ. SEZ stands for Special Economic Zones. It is now proposed to extend Chapter 3 incentive MEIS and SEIS to unit located in SEZ also. So all those units are established in a special economic zones. For those units also MEIS and SEIS schemes are applicable. This is the very big thing actually. Fourth, duty credit script to freely transferable and usable for payment of custom duty, excise duty and service tax. So you just need down only few points from here. Script issued under export from India scheme can be used for the following: payment of custom duty for import of inputs, payment of excise duty on domestic procurement of inputs or goods including capital goods, payment of service tax on procurement of services as per the DOR notifications. Now, fifth, status holder. Business leaders who have excelled, all those leaders who have excelled in an international transaction and international trade, and they have to successfully contributed to the country foreign trade, are proposed to be recognized as a status holder and given special treatment and privilege to facilitate their trade transactions in order to reduce their transaction cost and time. So all those persons who have some certain expertise in international trade, they will become successfully contributing to the Indian foreign trade, are proposed to recognize as a status holder. Those persons will be called as a status holder and they will get some certain benefits of transaction cost and time. The nomenclature of export house, star export house, trading house, star trading house, premier trading house certificate has been changed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 star export house. Now, whatever the export house we used to call, they have been merged in a single ban and they will call as a 1 star export house, 2 star, 3 star export house, 4 star export house and 5 star export house. There will be a one common name. Depending on the star, then there will be a differentiation. The criteria for export performance for recognition of status holder have been changed from rupees to the US dollar earning. 6. Reduce the export obligations for domestic procurement under EPCG scheme. Yes, specific export obligation under the EPCG scheme in case capital goods are procured from indigenous manufacturer, which is currently 90% of the normal export obligation. 6 times at the duty saved amount has been reduced to the 75%. Yes, it is very important thing. Again, you just need down this point. which is currently 90% of the normal export obligation, has been reduced to 75% in order to promote domestic capital goods manufacturing industries. So this is basically for to promotion of the domestic capital goods manufacturing industries, and it has been slightly reduced by the 15%. Next, higher level of reward under MEIS. Higher level of reward under MEIS for export items with a high domestic content and value addition. It is proposed to give the higher level of reward to product with a high domestic content and value addition as compared to the product with a high import content and less value addition. Again, important point, a higher level of reward under MEI scheme for export items. So this is the proposed by the ministry to give the higher level of reward to those product reward to product with the high domestic content and value addition as compared to the product with high import content but less value addition. Now, next, I hope you are getting what actually I'm just telling you since last 20-25 minutes. Export import policy benefit for export business. The foreign trade policy, also known as the EXIM policy, is regulated by the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1982. FTP we are making in every 5 years. Okay. So FTP, also known as a EXIM policies, regulated by the Foreign Trade Regulation Act 1992. The main governing body in the matters concerning the EXIM policy, DGFT. If suppose that if someone is asking about who is the concerned body for export import, that is DGFT, Director General of Foreign Trade. Now, what are the objective of Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1982? As you already know, the EXIM policy is regulated by the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1982. The main objective of this act is to provide the development and regulation of the foreign trade by facilitating the imports into and augmenting export from India. Foreign Trade Act has replaced the earlier known as the Importer and Exporter Control Act 1947. It used to be the earlier act which is called Import and Export Act 1947. It has been replaced by the Foreign Trade Development and Regulation Act 1982. The main objective of this particular act to provide certain development, to provide certain regulation of foreign trade by facilitating the import into and augmenting the export from India. Now, what are the objective of EXIM policy or FTP, foreign trade policy? Now let us look the objective of EXIM policy of India. To promote the continuous growth in export to acquire a share of at least 1% of international mercantile trades. Okay. Again, next, to encourage the stable economic expansion by offering access to necessary capital goods, raw material, intermediate product, consumable installations, and element essential for providing services and expanding the production. Third, to improve the technical potency and productivity of Indian agriculture companies and services, thus enhancing their competitive power while creating the fresh employment possibilities and to stimulate the accomplishment of globally acknowledged norms of quality. Fourth, to supply the consumer with fine condition goods and services at a globally competitive rates while simultaneously generating a level of playing range for domestic production. These are the four basic objectives of EXIM policy or foreign trade policy. Now, EXIM overview in India. Foreign trade in India is promoted and facilitated by the DGFT. I have already told you, under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, MOCI. The DGFT issues the authorization to export and monitor their corresponding obligation through a network of 38 regional offices across the India. DGFT also implement the foreign trade policy of India. So Director General of Foreign Trade are the only responsible body for the implementing the foreign trade policy in India. So foreign trade policy is the prime policy that lays down simple and transparent procedure which are easy to comply with the administrator for efficient management and foreign trade in India. The policy aims at enhancing the country trade for economic growth and employment generation. So foreign trade policy is basically for one of the important document which consists of what are the export and import rate, what are the rates of the FDI and FII, means all the international transactions, all the international policies which is included in our foreign trade policies. The main aim of the foreign trade policies, it should be very simple, it should be very transparent. The policy aims at enhancing the country trade for economic growth and employment generation. The Custom Trade Tariff Act and Central Excise Tariff Act are the other two important acts which lay down how the custom and excise duties shall be levied on the trade respectively. There are some certain data. India's overall export in September 2020 were around $44.87 billion as compared to the $43.56 billion in September 19. Despite of the COVID, it has been increased, exhibiting a positive growth of 3%. For the very first time over, India's merchandise export rose up to 58% to 34% billion in March 21. Vice versa in 21.49 billion in March 2020. It has been increased despite of COVID situation in the across the globe. Major commodities or commodity groups which have recorded positive growth during the September 2020: other cells, irons, rice, oil mills, carpet, ceramic product and glassware, oil seeds. So numerous number of the product we have seen right down here, which is written down here. They have seen the positive growth in the last 2 years. Now we are moving towards what are the EXIM infra we have while talking about the Indian market. EXIM infra, export import infra we are talking about. About 95% of the Indian mercantile trade by volume is handled by the maritime transport. Jawaharlal Nehru Port Trust (JNPT) in Maharashtra is India's largest port. In India, most of the export import we are doing from the ship, by the sea route, handling approx 55% of the container cargo across the all major part. So JNPT is one of the leading port in India. Currently, the country has a presence of 290 inland container depot and freight stations for trade. If we are talking about the port network in India, to reduce the logistic cost for cargo and promote port-led industrial development, the government of India launched the Sagarmala program in 2015, under which 6 new major port and 14 coastal economic zones have been identified for the development of export and import infra. The program 4 main pillars are port modernization. They were looking for the port modernization, better port connectivity among all the ports in India, port-led industrialization and coastal community development in across the India. So we have around the major ports is written down here: Kandla Port, Nhava Sheva, Maharashtra; Mumbai Port, Visakhapatnam Port, which is led down Andhra Pradesh; Mermagaon Port, New Mangalore, Chennai; Cochin Port, Haldia Port, Kolkata; Port Blair, Tuticorin, Paradip; Ennore Port, Chennai; and Vizag Port, which is in Visakhapatnam. If we are talking about the road network, we have with the targeted construction of the 40 km of national highway every day during the 2018 and 19, the world's second largest road network in India is aiming to reach the pinnacle soon. For efficient movement of goods and better district level connectivity, again ND government has launched the one Pariyojana that was called Bharatmala Pariyojana, was launched by the government of India in 2015. The program aimed to develop the 15 new industrial corridors at 34,800 km of road network in phase 1, including to 10,000 km of the residual road network under the NSDP, and connect 550 districts through 4-lane national highway. If we are talking about the rail network, trade through railway in India is very prominent, with the Indian Railway transporting over 1.2 billion tons of freight in 2017 and 18. There are 6 high capacity, high speed freight corridor coming up in the country to support the Indian Railway to manage 40% model freight share of the economy. So in India, basically within the India, we are talking about the rail network playing a very vital role for moving the goods from one place to the other place. So this is all about the very first lecture. Once again, thank you so much for joining. Goodbye. Take care.